Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful. Okay, so we want to start off with the demos. Who is ready to volunteer to do the demos? Because last time we started and then everyone started volunteering at the end and we had to leave and we went on for 2 hours. So I hope somebody's ready to volunteer. Otherwise, let me see who's on and I will call myself somebody to volunteer. Oh, let me just explain something for those of you who are new. This is not one of those medical masks. It's religious. So don't be afraid. It's just my personal decision to do it. It's not Islamically required for everybody. It's optional. So just to let you know, don't be offset by that, because some of my videos that are online, I heard that people wonder what kind of mask is that. So don't put me in that category of having one of those ridiculous hospital masks, which I'm totally against. You see, this allows me to completely breathe nicely, and I actually have a very good friend who makes me every now and then a new one. So hopefully you'll see a new one soon if you're getting bored of this white one. Okay, so let me see who's on. Is there somebody ready to volunteer? Remember last time, Oscar and Diane and a few others were ready to volunteer at the end. So remember that I'm going to ask you, what is the latest thing that just happened that upset you? And usually it's good to pick the latest thing because it's fresh in your mind, and we can just break it down easier that way. Otherwise, I'm gonna see and call on you. So I don't see Diane. I know she always has something to say. Okay, you know what? Let me try. I won't publicly call on you. Let me just see if privately. Sister Shihara, do you want to?
I'm actually a very happy person, sister.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't have anything upsetting me yet.
Oh, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's
Maybe
not necessarily about being happy, right? We all get upset, but it's about empowering oneself. Is somebody saying something?
It's me. Sorry, Shihara. The only thing that's me is when I have to cook, because I don't like cooking.
You don't like to cook?
No, do you have any suggestions?
Okay, you don't like to cook. So what are the feelings you get when you start cooking?
I feel I feel it to be very tedious. I love eating, but I don't like cooking. So, but once I get into it, it's just getting my mind wrapped around the fact that it must be done. Because my husband is out of town, so I am it. So, but it just frustrates me sometimes.
Okay, the first principle, remember what we talked about. The first principle we'll learn, and the more demos you'll see, the more you'll see how this works. Why I start off with that question, because ultimately you're going to come to the conclusion that every single thing that upsets you, if it's about a person, usually that's what it's going to be. It's going to be about an interaction that you had with the person that set you off, right? But anything that upsets us in the present, it's something related unconsciously to the past. It's implicit memory in the body that is rising to the surface. And so it takes time to figure all these principles. And so that's why the more demos we do, the better we'll be able to do it. So I want you to think back, first of all, this upsetting feeling you get about cooking when your mom was cooking or whoever was cooking when you were a child. What was going on? What was the scene?
I didn't obviously grow up here, so we always had I guess we always had assistance with the cooking. So I used to love watching them cook, but I never actually did anything. So it's just, I think in my mind, I just want to go back to that time and have some assistance with it. So it just frustrates me sometimes being here because, it is expensive to get someone to come in and do those kind of chores for you. So I think in my mind, I still go back to my childhood and I want to be there where I can have help and so on and so forth.
Okay, so no, but you didn't describe to me, like, I'm going to establish that every single demo we do, there's almost no exception to this. But anything that upsets us, it's something about the past. So was there any kind of, and this is not about psychoanalysis and breaking down what happened to you or any of that, but is there any scene that comes to mind that you had some strong emotions about cooking, where whether it was your mother or father or somebody that was cooking, that some emotions arose?
No, actually, you know what it is? It's my husband. He's a better cook than me.
Oh,
So I remember when we first got married and I attempted to cook, he wasn't quite, he wasn't encouraging, so to speak. So, so I think maybe I'm always kind of like afraid, like, will my food be, will it be yummy? Will people like it? Like that kind of stuff. Maybe, I don't know.
okay. So you just have some nervousness about, is it he's better cook than you?
Oh, most definitely, yes.
Okay. Okay, well yeah, you're right. That's a totally different scenario. I'm looking for somebody, like, we all have something that just upset us, right? Like whether it's at the grocery store and you didn't like the way the clerk even didn't address you properly, or whatever it is that ticked you off, you know? Um,
Right.
so that kind of thing that happened most recently, it could be a minor thing, it could be a major thing, it could be anything. So I have some people privately messaging saying, don't call on me. Okay. So that means whoever didn't private message me, I can call on you. I like to get guys. Frank, do you have anything that upset you? So the best prime example is something said something to you that made you upset, that you think made you upset. And the reason why I'm wording it that way is because it's really not accurate that anyone can push our buttons. And that's actually the training. Eventually, to know how not to let anybody push our buttons, because it's all in our own choice, it's our decision. So that's where we need to get to in terms of empowerment. So in order to get there, we need to understand the principles, and that we need to, more than understanding the principles, apply them. And you're not going to know how to apply them unless we see an example. So, and we never use here like a fictional example. We want actually what happened, because why do you think that is?
Yeah, I can mention an example of, say, for example, parental alienation. Unfortunately,
Okay,
when the
wait,
time
before
comes.
you give me an example, Frank, do you mind putting on your video? Because this is a conversation between you and me, and it works better and then everyone else has to be quiet when we do this. It's quite deep when we do the actual demo.
Oh, okay. All right. This is my first time here. Actually, on
That's
this computer,
okay.
I'm not put on the camera.
You don't
So
want to put on, okay. So would you be able to explain to me what you were about to do? Just tell me, not theory or example, but what actually happened, and then we're going to break it down. Okay.
yeah, like well, there's many examples, but in one example,
Okay.
unfortunately, my ex, which is my children's mother,
Okay.
told them, for
How
example,
old is your child?
oh, one is 14 and the other one is 11.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we had a faith-based marriage without the without the what do you call it, like a civil marriage. We didn't have that where you have a quote unquote marriage license that is issued by the state. So as my daughter got older and she asked her mother, okay, what's the main reason why you and or why we separated, or you got the just
Mm-hmm.
faith-based divorce. And because unfortunately her mother when they were younger decided to commit adultery. And her mom said, oh, well, your father and I, we were together for 16 years, had you two children, but we were never quote unquote married. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I guess trying to make light of the situation. So my daughter she asked me, she said, "Were you and my mother ever married?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we were married. We had a faith-based marriage." And I explained it to your mom, and she agreed upon it and everything was well. And so yeah, my children, they realized the truth and they asked, some other family members for that confirmation, and they also said yes that we were married. But it showed them, it's like why would their mother or some parents bring children into the middle of it and use them as weapons. That's what's called parental alienation. So yeah, that's an example of what made me angry. It's
Okay.
actually more not more so angry, but like disappointed and also kind of sad for the children as well, because they're
Yes.
the ones who are hurt. So it was like
Yeah.
it's like being betrayed, like father, like the father continues the betrayal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me get this clear and clarified by you. So the part that made you upset is that your ex made it look like you didn't have a bona fide marriage, let's say, whereas you two obviously chose to have that type of marriage, which is valid under God's law, right? Is And then so you resent the fact that she said that to him in or her in that way.
Yes, because it's like I chose to, you know, be what do you call it, responsible father and not
Yeah.
talk against the mother to my children. And I'm like,
Mhm.
this continues. And I'm like, why does that continue? It's like the father continues the betrayal and want to bring the children involved to somehow, get them on her side and to justify the situation. And it's just like it's an old saying, like once a person lies, then they try to cover that lie up with another lie. And it's like the lies just continue to multiply and multiply. And so I'm like, wow, wow, just stop it.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there's a lot. So what were the salient emotions you felt when your child was asking this question? You said betrayed, right?
Yes, it's further betrayal. It's just not only on my part, but it's also on the children's part, because the children are betrayed also, because you know um that's what happens when mother and father separates. It's a what do you call it? It's a breakdown of the family unit. And so when my daughter asked me that question, she's asked me that 2 days ago. Um, and so I just in the moment I said, wow, I was like, well, being that she's 14, I said, you know, um, I can tell you that we had a faith-based marriage, and you actually have seen an example of that. Uh, and 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 so I was just, what do you call it? Thinking as I was answering the question for her cause I did tell her, I said, well, I can tell you more as you get older, because right now my focus is for, the best for your children and have a happy, childhood. And now you're going to be a teenager. And it's just like, my focus has always been on positivity. That's what I told my daughter. So I'm like, we can talk about it later. My daughter was like, no, I want to talk about it now. I want to know now. She's like, I care about it now. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so being you care about it now, I will, go ahead and answer the question. Is that, yeah, this was a faith-based marriage, and thankfully, um, since my daughters were young, I reared them according to the law of Almighty Creator, so they do comprehend that, and by them also having further I guess confirmation from others that what a faith-based marriage is. She was able to, yes, she was able to see and accept the truth, because she told me, yeah, Daddy, I understand and I see the truth.
Okay, I want to go back to your feelings though. That was all just a setup for me to understand the background of what your feelings were. Okay, so now I want to go back to your emotions and feelings. As you're explaining that to her, what were you feeling?
Okay. Yeah,
Besides the betrayal, what else?
feeling sad, feeling like why, like asking myself, why would their mother
Right.
say that to them? It's
Yeah.
like it's like this is so
Yeah.
what
So
do you
you're
call it?
reeling.
Insane.
Sorry, when we do this SSRI, there's going to be some interruptions for me. It's not like
That's okay.
traditional therapy where it's not about what happened. Okay, we're getting to the core of why people's emotions eventually can feel like they're out of control. But the whole thing is, once we realize the whole full spectrum of this, we realize we actually do have complete control. It's just that we're living in an unconscious way. We never understood ourselves. Nobody taught us how to understand ourselves. So there's a lot of things to parse here. Okay, so the first thing to know is that whatever upsets us in the present moment, it's always related to the past. But this type of training doesn't mean that we have to go back to the past and say, woe is me. Oh, I'm like this because this happened to me, or I was abused, or whatever that was. So, our definition of trauma is that trauma is not what happened to you, but it's the internal processing or lack thereof that is the real trauma. Because as you saw with that little child, that's the way it should have been done. Anytime something happened to us, we should have had a nurturing caregiver, at least one in our life, that we could have spoken to about our emotions. But because most of us, by and large, it doesn't matter what ethnicity, doesn't matter what country, what nationality, we're living in a postmodern world that never taught us these things. So we have to fix that right now. Many of you might have heard my past talks, about that, which now we're seeing on a daily basis in America, where everyone's emotions is just completely out of control, and that comes from the toxemia, partly from the toxemia, and then partly from um, just not being able to process and understand, and then get reflection of that emotion. And more than the emotion is the feeling underneath it. So you said a very powerful feeling, which is sadness. So underneath an emotion, and so even in emotion is not the crux of the matter. It's the sensations, it's the feeling, and feelings are actually very minimal. I'm sad, hurt, hungry, thirsty, angry. Those are the basic feelings when we peel the onion layers of emotions off. So emotions, firstly, are interpreted by us. So, and And then the core of all of this is a belief system that we attach even to that emotion and a feeling. Okay, so when that so you're thinking about your wife as your daughter is asking that question, and how could she do this? How could she say this to our child? I don't and correct me if I'm wrong, thoughts like, I don't pollute our children with opinions about her, and so on and so on. That's called the attached meaning to what is happening, right? So can you share with me if you had, we all do, so you see there's so many onion layers to this. So something is happening right now that is upsetting me. This person is saying this to me. My child, obviously you're not upset at your daughter. You're upset at the fact that why would your ex-wife do this? Because it's hurtful. So that's one level of it. And then I would take you back to your past, and it probably is linked with something perhaps that you didn't like the way your parents kind of didn't stand up for each other. I would take you back to this, but right now, just as a demo, as an explanatory form of this demo, this is normally not how we do it. We just get into it, but I want to explain something here. And then there is this aspect of what meaning are you attaching to it? So, but now I want you to go a little further even. This is an advanced step in this SSRI. The advanced step would ultimately let us, give us complete freedom in turning this entirely around and empowering ourselves, which is, so now you're thinking, this is betrayal, and this is the part that's upsetting you, right? So, and actually someone else can answer this, because you're all listening to this example. Could there be any other reason why your ex-wife said that to your daughter, to your children, that, well, we didn't really have, this marriage, although it was a faith-based marriage. So that's the advanced level, to think of other possibilities. So usually those are the two most important points. One is, what is the attached meaning? And then finally, what other possibility could there be that I'm getting so upset about this, but that other person that I'm upset about, is there any other possibility that they mean here? For instance, okay, I'm going to give you an example.
I can give you an example, which actually is true.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Frank.
Okay, so what the attorneys do is, say, for example, in child custody, I guess, court situations, and if the mother and father, like in my case, they knew we had a faith-based marriage, and so they were like, oh yeah, they never really were married. They didn't have a marriage license by the state. They try to, what do you call it, nullify, or basically not give any, what do you call it, weight or credence to faith-based marriage. And in turn, what that does is that it puts the child in a, what they call it, a ward of the state type of situation. And the state says, that any child born outside of marriage is what is called born out of wedlock, or born in wedlock. And then they say, oh well, that they quote unquote it as a bastard child. And so by having those influences of the attorney, of the mothers, then that's what came to my mind as well. I'm like, okay, well, there's an outside influence on this situation that's putting more negative energy to the situation. So, I told my daughter, I was like, yeah, one, that's why your father's here, and I stood up for you, and I am continuing to learn more on law, and to fight for custody of both you and your sister. And you're not wards of the state. You're not orphans. Your father is alive. I'm here, and I'm continuing to do what I can for you. And you all are not quote unquote bastards. There's no such thing. That is what is a fiction made up by the state. You all are, children of the Almighty Creator, the Most High God, and you're a blessing, and you're angels, and you're my princesses. And my role is to continue to provide everything that I'm able to provide for you, with the blessings of the Almighty Creator, to rear you into, queens, to be, successful in life, and to have a good, healthy foundation spiritually, mentally, and physically, and everything else. So that's how I take it. So, and you asked a minute ago about if I mentioned any what do you call it, negative or polluting comments about the mom. And I'm like, no, there's no reason to. What is between, how I look at it, is what is between the mother and the father is not have to be shared with the children for the children to take one side or another. It doesn't matter. What is done is done. Let's move forward, be adults, be responsible for the children, and make the best of life that we can, that we have. So that's how I take it.
Okay, awesome. So you see, in the heat of the moment, everything is done unconsciously. That's why we all have to wake up. A lot of these things are not even our faults. They're not our faults. Nobody taught us how to come out of unconscious living into conscious living. So that's all in implicit memory. When we react, when we're reactionary in the present moment of whatever the latest thing that upset us, it's always something to do with implicit negative memory that happened, and it's stuck somewhere in the body. So the more we do this, the more we release it, unleash it, and then the next upsetting thing that happens, because nobody gets through life without continual things upsetting, frankly, right? So the more we do this, the more we can wake up and live a conscious life and not get upset. So what's going to happen is eventually this is how it becomes a game. It becomes a fun game where we find ourselves getting upset and we say, hey, okay, let me think about it. Why am I getting upset right now? Oh, it's because this and this and this. So we check ourselves, and then eventually we'll be able to live, more and more consciously. I don't know about completely conscious. That requires a master level to be there. But obviously there are people walking on earth that are at that mastery level. So, but you're already way up there. So, but I know you come, anybody who is figuring out the law has to be thinking. So kudos to you on that. So that was a very good example. Thank you, Frank. If you think of another one, let me know. I'm going to give you an example like that just happened with my kids, just so people see that it could be a trivial matter that could make us, this is how we make mountains out of molehills. So my young adult children who are living together, and then I come in, we live a half an hour away, my husband and I. And so usually right when I walk in the door, it's the latest altercation that they had. And my daughter, she has more of a tendency to make this interpretation very negative. So I'll give you this example, which I already knew because my son texted me that, Mom, when you come and here, can you just spray WD-40 on Darya's bathroom, because he has misophonia, which is like hyperacusis, where squeaky noises bother him a lot. And a lot of that is from this whole toxicity, by the way. Even though they're not vaccinated, a lot of these spike proteins and everything have given weird symptoms to everybody. So wash the water, everybody. Make sure you drink filtered water. So a lot of what I, teach, as some of you know, it is coming from toxemia in the brain. So we're all like on edge. That's additional factor. But still, anyway, this part is really important. The part there, if the more we live consciously and understand that we can rein in those emotions, we can't control anybody else. It's a fallacy. No one can make us upset. That's what we'll learn in this training once we understand that it's our own emotions that we need to work on. So anyway, so my son had already texted me that as soon as you come in, can you do WD-40? I'm going to bed, blah, 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 in Daria's bathroom. Now, then I said, oh, not there. I'm not going to be there till later. And I think it was really bothering him because she was going in and out of her bathroom, and the squeak was really bothering him. If you look up misophonia, it's not something like, it's kind of serious. It's kind of like affects the brain practically. So anyway, as soon as I walk in, my daughter accosts me and says, how dare he? You don't understand what he just did. I'm like, whoa, what? And she said, Dean purposefully sprayed this horrific smelling chemical. Now, she obviously has a different issue with scents rather than sounds. And she said, he was just getting back at me for, I know he's getting back at me for slamming the door, because I slammed the door, because she already knows he has hyperacusis. And I didn't even get a word in edgewise to tell her that wasn't the case. She assumed he sprayed a toxic, noxious chemical on purpose because she had accidentally slammed the door and didn't even get an opportunity to explain to him, hey, I accidentally slammed the door downstairs. Don't take it personally. Because we all know that sounds bother him, like abrupt sounds. So you see all this, what was going on here? She was going to the worst explanation first. That's, ultimately what we do unconsciously almost all the time. When someone is saying something or doing something, we unconsciously go to the worst explanation rather than, it's in Arabic, we call it husn al-dhan. All the prophets taught us that we're supposed to have a good opinion of each other. So we have to train ourselves to get those good opinions, because obviously we know Satan whispers and he likes us to think the worst of each other. Okay, so there's a lot of that going on. So that's the kind of example I mean. Now, what happened is, so I spoke to her, now if I had so she started telling me all this, he did all this. If I interrupted her, that makes her upset. She's going to be further upset. Why? Because she just wants to be heard. That's all she wants. So, so I let her speak all of it until I told her what the reality was. I said, the reality is he already texted me. It wasn't a noxious chemical, Daria. He already told me about the WD-40. And you know what? Because she got to completely say the whole scenario, what happened, and I listened to her. That's the other aspect of it. We all want to just be heard for our reality. So because I did not interrupt her, and I heard her whole story, she said, oh yeah, Mom, I wanted to thank him if it's about the WD-40 and squeaking, because I know that bathroom door is squeaking. Now, in the past, I would try to just interrupt and just tell her. So we save time and say, that's not what it is. But I learned as a mother, oh my God, no, regardless of the reality is, she just wants to be heard of what state she's in right now because of these interactions that happened. And so that's a really important part of it. We all just want to be recognized and heard. I want you all to look up, and then if you haven't, by the next time we have a session, look up these experiments that they did with babies. So what they did is they put babies, in those glass mirrored, investigative rooms, and then the scientists go behind the glass and watch and observe what happens. So they put a baby with the mother in the same room, and the mother is reflecting back every facial gesture of the baby. We all want a reflection of our state. That's a need, a human need. How do we know that? All babies need that to survive, literally to survive. So they tested this out behind these glass, rooms, and observe where mothers are just mirroring back the baby's face. And then what they did is they took the mothers out, and then they had them come back in, and either through a screen or in person, and they had them not mirror, but do a different facial gesture than what the baby was emitting. So if the baby was smiling, the mother would frown. Or if the baby is crying, the mother would smile. And this, not having the mirroring effect, would always make the baby cry, because there's no reflection or reciprocation of, hey, you don't get what state I'm in right now. So everybody has a need for their state to be reflected back at them. And so once we deliver that, then you could see the emotions of that other person. So this is about how we can use this when we want to help another person around us. And that's the advanced level. First, we have to rein in our own emotions, right? And then at the advanced level, because then it becomes like, okay, I've done a lot of self-inquiry here, self-investigation, to know that I do have control of my emotions. And so at the advanced level, that question comes up. Well, okay, now I understand myself, but this person is really irking me, and they're on edge. So how do I deal with that? So if you go into their world and just copy their state, which ultimately, by the grace of God, I've been doing for years, no matter what state that individual is in, and in these post-COVID times, by God's grace, there's all these, first of all, erratic emotions, and then even people who've been labeled various mental illnesses after all these toxic effects that we're all experiencing. That is, everywhere, whether vaccinated or not vaccinated, but surely the vaccinated have way more. And the reason I called it SSRI, Sufi Salon, SufiSalon.com, is where, this training, where people can get it. And I go to seminars and do it. But now I'm doing it just free offerings, because the level of out of control emotions is so rampant that people have no idea where it's coming from. But anyway, so that's why we're offering these free trainings, to try to make as many safe places as possible. All these public shootings are happening because they're ricocheting reactionary emotions all over the place. All somebody had to do, you can start seeing that look of out of control emotions in a person's eyes. So if you go to SufiSalon.com, and the articles, the blog or whatever it is called, there's a couple of articles in there about angry eyes. So look that up and you'll see what I mean. I wrote a little blurb about that. So it's in the eyes. You could see that a person, when a person in a certain therapy in I think it's Richard Schwartz, his entire therapy is based on these different levels that we have, and he calls them from childhood parts that we have. We have like a manager part, we have this firefighter. Okay, you never want to get in between a person who's in a state of a firefighter. It means that unless you're trained. And then once you're trained, you can actually engage with the firefighter and diffuse their bursting emotions. So that's at the advanced level. But a firefighter is somebody whose volcanic emotions, whatever idea they have in their head, it's like a robot. They program themselves to just go and do that thing, like practically psychotic. But even that person in these post-COVID times, I've been able to, again, by God's grace, get them to calm down. There was actually a person whose family told me they know what I do, and they said, like, he actually said he's going to go commit homicide. And I said, well, pre-COVID times, I wouldn't, necessarily take that seriously, but nowadays we have no idea. If you look at the latest headline news, they're actually admitting it. And that's actually coming from some of the toxemia of the vaccines, which, that requires a whole nother story. But you see, they had investigated SSRIs, and this is all plays out in the judicial courts. The scientists who make SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, fancy way of saying forcing serotonin increase in the brain, which is actually extremely detrimental and can make the most docile lamb of a person into a Hitler within seconds after taking such a drug, or after being addicted to it, coming off of it. But anyway, they had already studied that, and people get, that know that the scientists knew it, they get paid out in the millions in the courtrooms by proving that it was the SSRI drug that made them into that Hitler. And if you go to ssristories.net, you'll see that tons and tons of stories that prove that. And I know the top forensic expert in the world who was called in various courtrooms across America. And then she had the scientists, because, when you do discovery, you can call them, subpoena them, and they know it. They know that's what it does. So what I know is that they already knew how to do to the brain, and somehow increase that exponentially into the current vaccines that we have. That's why we see this complete breakdown and in emotion. So a lot of these stories that you're reading and seeing now, you could see that these people are saying, and even the perpetrators are admitting it. When does a perpetrator admit it and say, like, yeah, I did this? In many cases, they're just calling the police themselves. That's how you know there's something weird going on in this post-COVID world, because they're announcing it, first of all, ahead of time. So there's a thought action fusion that is taking place. So, and all this, if you go down the line of why are they doing this? Why are they putting such toxic ingredients when the scientists know what it's going to do to the brain? I mean, the whole in America, trying to take away the gun control and all of that. And look at what they're doing. They're taking advantage of all these public shootings to take away the next right, that fundamentally Americans have, one of the last in the world. But it's not about that. It's not about gun control. It's about proving in the courtrooms that there's a toxemia effect, and we can prove that, because they've done that with SSRIs. It's played out in the courtrooms. We know for a fact that SSRIs, every single public shooting that happened in America, the common denominator is they were on an SSRI. And now, if they were on an SSRI and you've got this COVID vaccine, that's why you see this complete explosion of behavior. But even those people, I'm saying, if we, using this training, we can train families to help them control and rein in those explosive volcanic emotions. So I think it's one of the most important things in the world right now. While it gets played out in the courtrooms, and these families wake up and realize that the perpetrator is actually the victim. Even that what's the name, Kohlberger, the one with the Iowa the campus, famous case, you could see that if you look at his face, he's just puzzled at what he did. Remember, there always has to be, what is the cause? They have to look for a reason why they committed that crime, and all of these things they don't know. The perpetrator has no idea. Like these random shooters that are going in. The latest one was where he didn't even know anybody. So you have those that, like colleagues, and something happened, they're about to be fired, and they look for the probable cause. What's their reason for doing this? But more and more we're finding that there's absolutely no reason. It's just wanton, random shootings, and the perpetrator themselves has no idea why they're doing it. That's the era that we live in. So it's quite wild. That's why it's really, really crucial that people wake up to what's happening and what's the storyline behind it. But in the meantime, what I'm doing my part is, because it works, training people at a small trivial level, whether it's a tiff that you want to understand, or a tumult, or like, what is the remedy if you don't want to get a divorce. Try these options of reining in the emotions, because the next person that you pick to marry, it's going to be the same thing. I don't know why people don't get it. We have to rein in our emotions, because the grass is not greener on the other side. It may look like it, but the more we have control, it's so necessary. And it's really unfortunate that it's not taught. And so I developed this by leaving the conventional psychology, after studying it, and I consider it complete failure if what my field says is, oh, well, you have to have years and years of therapy in order to, not be reactionary and rise above the trauma of your childhood. So again, if you come from this perspective that trauma is not what happened to you, because none of us can control what happens to us. Trauma is the lack of internal processing of what happened to you, and nobody taught us that. If something happens and we're able to speak to a nurturing adult as a child, and we can still do that, so that's what I'm saying. We can still go back to every scenario that we were, quote, traumatized, and then process it ourselves now. Okay, never mind that there was no adult at that time. We're over that era. As they say, it's never too late to fix your childhood. Completely. It's not just an idiom. We could actually make that a reality if we reprocess everything that is salient in our mind that we consider as trauma. All we have to do is reprocess it. And where do we reprocess it? It comes up in the present moment. Every time we are upset, it's attached to some trauma that we did not process from childhood. Okay, so we don't still have a really good example of that. So let me see if someone else has. So is there someone else that would like to talk about something that recently upset them in terms of an interchange they had? The best examples are those that is with another person, and the best examples are always going to be spouses. Spousal examples are the best because there's always something fresh that just happened. Otherwise, I'll have to bore you with, I had to think of one with my husband. And also we develop coping mechanisms, right? Because we didn't process this as children, or as by the time we're adults. So what happens is we have let me give you an example. For instance, my husband's coping mechanism is sulking, which I know because of my training, it's what he must have done with his parents whenever he didn't understand something that they did, and there was no talk of emotions. There was no talk of whatever occurred and processing those emotions. So he does that with me. So I'll give you an example. He likes to watch these stupid cooking like videos on YouTube, and I, go along with it just because that's what he likes as buddy time. And sometimes I speak up and, and I just say, I'll read. So we have this time together, right? And then I have a lot of things to read, and he doesn't like it. He actually wants me to engage and talk about, and it's not a cooking show. It's, like Mark Wiens, have you heard of him? Like people that are going to restaurants and talking about what they eat. So I just consider it, it's superfluous. Like, who needs this? But anyway, I put up with it since he likes it. So, and every now and then he asks me, oh, so look, after your program or after this, we're going to watch this. I'm like, okay. But he has this thing about like how to do it too. He really wants me to watch. He doesn't like it if I'm multitasking. And so if I say I'm going to do it and then I start doing my multitasking, then he comes up with this ruse that, oh, okay, you must be busy. Like, he changes the whole thing, explanation saying, oh, you must be busy, so go ahead and go do something else. I'm like, no, like I just was doing some multitasking for a minute. I'm watching the program. So then he'll sulk and, come up with some ruse, come up with some explanation why, I don't know, you go ahead and do your thing, because like he really wants to be engaged. So I can look at it like this and I can get really mad and say like, well, at least I'm sitting here with you. But then I started processing it and realized he doesn't want to say it because he probably didn't get to say to his parents exactly what he was feeling, that he just wanted complete attention. So instead of saying that, he'll just sulk and say, you probably want to go do your own thing. And then, so you know what I mean? So I can't control his sulking, but I can change my processing and try to understand what's happening here. So, in the past, I would say, oh, what a, blank label, like, and I don't have to completely give full attention to such a silly program. Why can't I multitask? But that's just from my perspective. From his perspective, as I think about it, he actually wants to spend time with me. You see, why doesn't my brain go to that? It's actually a positive thing. He cherishes, he's probably looking forward to spending that time with me and having that full attention, just like my daughter wanted. I didn't get to that conclusion in the past. It's after doing, this my SSRI, reflective intimacy. The first part, Sufi Salon, is just the name of the site, sufisalon.com, reflective intimacy. And I have to tell you, our entire life is completely different because of waking up out of that unconscious reactionary kind of stuff. And we do this to ourselves. Our entire relations with, whether it's an acquaintance or a loved one, we can go deeper and deeper into every single relation that we have, such that I don't want anyone to be without this understanding, this kind of therapy, which you're not going to find, because I thank God, put it together by seeking the best teachers in the world who left conventional psychiatry and psychology. Why did they leave that? Because it takes lifelong and it doesn't work, frankly. Putting people on medications. Oh, you're depressed, here's a medication. No, how about we process our life? Process what's going on. because none of us, I'm telling you, are living a conscious life. And we're really, really beautiful human beings at the core, if you really get to be your authentic self. So that's a lot of what happened. You know, the coping mechanism, whether it's sulking or some people just need to leave the scene. That's the way I would, you know, like if something my husband said is really bothering me, I would need to leave. Like I'll just go shopping or whatever. That's what I did with my parents. You know, if there was something bothering me and nobody's allowed to talk about emotions, and I would just leave. So that became a coping mechanism. But now when we're fully grown adults, it hinders us. That habit, which is called a coping mechanism, for some, fill in the blank what the coping mechanism is. Alcohol, you know, being an alcoholic. So I disagree with, you know, that whole system like AAA, you know, admit, oh, I'm an alcoholic. You don't have to label yourself, because I actually disagree with that. Once you say that, it's harder to come out of it, because we want to make it look like a temporary thing. These are all different parts of us that are still residing and resounding in our body because we didn't consciously process it. What's going on? How did I get here? How, you know? So once we do that step by step, opening these onion layers, then we become a radically different, fully mature human being, which I think there's very few of, very, very few of. It's complete immaturity all over the place until we live consciously. And such that once you see somebody who hasn't done this work, you'll kind of feel sorry for them, that they're just living a reactionary, immature life and have, you know, fully grown adults sulking is certainly not what children need. And I'm talking about young adult children. That's why they're all just looking at their screens and looking like zombies. They don't have engaging adults around them. So are people getting the example? I hope. So I didn't want to talk much about theory, but it's all based on you all who show up. So last week we had some good participants. So every week it's different, just for some of the newbies to know. It's totally based on who volunteers. So thank you very much, Frank. Every single person who volunteers, you're going to allow everyone else to have catharsis in seeing that, oh, that's how it works. So and then that's why I like the in-person, when we do go into various cities and we do it in person. Every single time we've done this in person, you know, a room filled with people who are ready to share, we've never had a dry eye, any program with dry eyes in the room. That's how deep we can get. It becomes so just intriguing, to say the very least, and you will want to start practicing it right away. And rather than allowing every upset thing, what's going to happen is when we do get upset, you're going to say, oh, wait a minute, let me use this opportunity to unpack what is happening here. And then eventually we'll be able to do it in the moment, right? In the beginning, you'll be doing it right after a certain tiff or something happened, you know, where we get upset. But then eventually you'll be able to do it as it's happening. And that's when it will start to become a radical shift in our life. Okay, so with that, is there any other volunteer that we have? Otherwise, I just have to give you either my own examples or just give you more theory. It's not as fun to do a series with theory, you all. So does anybody have an example of recent upsetness?
Okay.
Awesome.
I guess I'll dare ask.
Okay. All right, who is
Okay.
this?
I'm Heidi.
Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
Yeah, how are you, Heidi?
I'm doing good.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I'll tell you my last upset,
Okay.
which is really trivial.
Okay.
But my husband,
Hold on, Heidi, you're breaking up, at least for me. Sister Shihara?
after
Okay, can you repeat that, Heidi? You broke up.
oh, okay. Okay, so yesterday my husband wanted to go trim the bushes around the house. And I told him that I would rather him not trim them right now until the fall, because they're just getting the flowers and they're just looking really pretty. And I said, let's just wait till fall. And he goes and trims them anyway. So I get bugged because he asks me my opinion, but my opinion never is good enough for him.
Okay.
So
Okay.
how do I process that?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, tell me what emotion you felt. So let me get this straight. First of all, the actual interaction was that he asked you your opinion about it, and you actually wanted to delay, but he went ahead and did it anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was the emotion you felt?
How it just brings up the emotion from every time that he does
Oh, he
it.
does
When
that
I tell
often. Are you
him,
saying that he does that often, Heidi, where he asks you something and then he
Yes.
does it anyway?
yes, and I say, no, let's not do that. And
Okay.
he does it anyway.
Okay.
And I guess it makes me feel bad because I don't have any say in anything.
Right. It's okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Some of the thoughts, or you might be interpreting that as saying, why does he even bother to ask me if he's going to go ahead and do his own thing anyway? That's annoying.
Uh-huh.
That kind of
Yes.
thought? Okay.
Yes. Because
Okay.
that's how I feel now, is if he asks me anything, I don't even want to tell him my opinion.
Exactly. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I want to know if there's any kind of similar interaction that you remember from your childhood, like with your parents or anybody else that you witnessed, where people ask each other their opinions, but then they go ahead and do whatever they were wanting to do rather than that opinion that they were given.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there was anything from my family. There probably is, but I don't remember.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to work with what you just said. Then I need you to tap in and check what emotion or feeling that you had when he did that. We all have emotions and feelings that rise up. And if you don't, that's okay. If you can't think of something, we'll move on to the next question. But as you see, this process involves me asking you questions. And eventually, that's what you're going to do in your private life as it's happening, right? So I'm giving you the training of what the inquiry you're going to do with yourself eventually. Okay. Okay.
So what are the feelings is the first one.
Yeah,
have to
the
write that
reason
down.
why is, okay, so remember that example that I used about my daughter. So when you
Uh-huh.
use it on somebody else, it's mirroring back. When you use it on yourself, that's your inquiring of yourself, right? You're mirroring to your own unconscious what actually happened, so you have a better grip on yourself. Okay?
Okay.
So as you remember that scene, okay, we're going to go to the next question. How do you interpret that? Because your husband did that, it's like this. It means that I'm inconsequential, blank. I'm giving you examples. I don't know if that's true. Because you didn't think about it enough to know right off the bat. I have to give you some possibilities of what you may be interpreting that to mean. Because he did not implement what I said, that means he's just playing with me. He's just wasting my time. I'm putting some blanks there and just to see if any of them fit for you, okay?
Okay.
Normally, a person is able to come up with it, but that's okay. Some people are not.
Yeah.
So because this takes a while to understand. what we should be processing ourselves. Okay, so no problem.
Okay.
If something rings the bell, let me know. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so he went ahead and did that thing, and he's just amusing me, and he's not taking me seriously. Or
He
is
doesn't think that I'm smart enough. He thinks
okay.
that he's the only one that has the right answers.
Okay, there you go. You see, okay, that's an example of an interpretation you gave to it.
Okay.
Now, that's the part I want you to think back in your childhood. Was there any scene where it replicates this type of one where you felt like you were not smart enough because of what someone said or did, whether it's a teacher, parent, or what have you?
Oh, well, one came up when I was young. I wonder if it's the same thing.
Okay.
It was on the radio. I was just 7 years old or 8, and I kept saying I had to go ask my mom who that person was that
Mhm.
died, because they were announcing that he passed away. And she got mad at me and just said, "You know who it is. Tell me who it is." And I didn't know who it was.
Okay.
But I don't know if that has anything to do with this.
Yeah, it is, because when I asked you the question, whatever answer you give me, that's from your unconscious.
Okay, so
Okay. That's what we work with, because your unconscious is controlling all of this. Okay. There's no
Okay.
right or wrong. It's your unconscious doing this. So that's why the more we start thinking about it, the more grasp we have of it, and the reins. That's where the reins come into play, because a lot of this it happens within seconds unconsciously. That whole scenario where your husband did that, it's unconscious reverberations, right? And then the ricocheting reactions happen according to those reverberations. You see what I mean? It happens within split seconds, because in that moment your conscious mind is not going to recall, why is this making me upset? That's why we're doing it now. It's not going to. And the more we practice it, eventually it will. But now it's not going to come to the fore. That's why it takes so much of practicing of this. Okay, now, if you were able, I don't know if you can tap into, what did that feel like when your mom said that? You know who it is. Like, even the way that was said to you feels very hurtful, right?
It did. It felt hurtful.
Yeah.
I felt bad. I felt stupid that I didn't know who that person was.
Right. Okay. So that's attached in your body somewhere. That's why when now your husband says that, you're really not upset at your husband. It's because you never got to talk about that squelching of emotion that happened when your mom said it. It's in your body. It's implicit memory. Okay.
Okay.
You see how this is totally different than the psychoanalysis type of therapy. But we have proof that every single time somebody said something to us as a child, it's living in our body. Isn't this the only body we had throughout our life? You think it just floated out of our body? Our bodies are beyond sponges. Every single word is a thing. In Arabic, the word for word is lafaz, which means like a arrow. It just goes into the air. Every single word has an effect. In fact, it was Zig Ziglar in one of his books who said that they did a survey of the incarcerated, and the majority of them were told by their parents, "You're going to be in prison someday." You see the words and the effect that they have? It's so crucial to this understanding. Now, the real trauma is not that your mom said that. It's that you didn't talk to her about it, I'm sure, right? Were you able to say, "Hey, Mom, that hurt me"?
Yeah.
Were you there when we played that video of the little kid and talking about?
Yes, that was so cute of that little kid.
Well, it's completely different way. How many of us got that? I would say 0, right?
Yeah,
No,
I didn't
that's
get
why
that.
we need to change the world in talking about these emotions. And our children should have been brought up in that way. Why? Because they'll be a more conscious, mature, complete human being by the time they're a young adult, even if they're able to talk about their emotions. And none of us grew up in such a world. We're living in post-colonial, post everything. And it's really, if we go back to our ancestry, that we'll see that the engagements between child and adult were completely different. And I disagree with this whole movement of, oh, our children need more play dates and more peers to, in fact, one of my friends said that recently. She said, you know, like they need to be around more of their peers. And I said, I disagree with you 100%. What they need, whether it's our young adults or children, is they need completely 100% in the moment there, nurturing, available 24/7 adults. Who has it? Oh, non-depressed, 24/7, 100% completely available adults in order to nurture a child. Which child got that? That's what allows them to be completely mature young adults by the time they are. It's just about complete attention, recognition. Now, so you didn't get that. You didn't get to speak about it with your mom, so it's still residing within you. And now when your husband does it, he's not going to know why that's ticking you off so much. Now, you see how it's all related to our template as a child. So, but again, we don't have to think of ourselves as victims of anything that happened to us. It's just about processing it properly. And we can give that gift to ourselves. So now, when the next time, you know, something is upset, ask yourself these same questions that I just asked you.
Okay, what are the feelings?
Yes. So first is like, what is the emotion?
I
Right?
can't read my, yeah, I can't read my writing. Okay,
First, ask yourself, what is the emotion I'm feeling here? And then you don't even have to come up with an answer. Ask yourself a different question if you don't have an answer for the first one, okay?
okay,
And then, okay, maybe I can't access the emotion. What is the feeling? Feelings, remember, are very simple. I'm hurt,
okay,
I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Okay?
okay,
If you can't get to the emotion, it's actually the feeling that is much more important than the emotion. The emotion is just to get to the feeling. And then if somebody can't even get to the feeling, what happens is when a person can't access it, it means they lived a disassociated portions of their childhood, they were disassociated, which means there's more trauma than meets the eye, than they even know about, that because they can't remember it. Okay. And trauma
yeah,
does not mean it was a huge, abominable thing that happened. It's just whatever our body thought was not okay, but we didn't get to process it with anybody. So obviously the standard traumas that we know are abuse, whether it's verbal or physical, and all these things. Let me tell you, like one of my teachers, and disassociating, you all understand that. It means when whatever is happening externally is so grand that your body just had to separate and because it couldn't take what was happening. So you basically, like ADHD, what is that? It meant portions of your childhood you disassociated because you didn't want to be there. Did you, as a child, if your parents were fighting and arguing, could you just walk out the door and leave? Can an 8-year-old do that? No. So what can you do? And what did we do? We would disassociate. We would tune ourselves out and think of something else. That's essentially how, by the way, OCD is so rampant. Those who have OCD, they decided to make their own rules because whatever was happening, they couldn't leave, and or there was just such a strict regimen that didn't make sense, that they had to go into their own world of rules that did make sense, which is ironic, right? Because the OCD rules are, by the time you're an adult, make no sense at all. Washing a million times, or people who take this many steps before they go out. Usually they had rules that they as a child weren't explained to, why this, and that. So the more we explain to our children when we do discipline them or give them rules, the better the outcome of being mature by the time they're young adults. So they need to learn about emotions and just be able to speak whatever's on their mind and be able to reflect it back. So the key word in a lot of this is reflection. Somebody needs to reflect back to us the exact state that we're feeling, and that makes us understood and valued and validated. Okay, and that's a human need, to be valued and validated. It doesn't matter what happened. Look at this era that we live in. People don't believe, right, that the vaccines are causing this, and that. And what is happening? All the anti-vaxxers, they feel unvalidated. Look at that every single person who said, the unvaccinated are what's making this virus spread, over and over and over. So where were the people who had valid reasons for not getting vaccinated? Where are they getting validated? That's why it was such a crushing divide and conquer technique, right? But that's a human need, to be validated. We needed to meet with other like-minded people, right? I mean, ultimately, that's why solitary confinement can make a person go crazy, insane, because we need validation. We need mirroring of our state. So, okay, thank you very much, Heidi. You see, even the most trivial example allows us to see this process. I hope that, and I'm sure it helps everyone on the call, Heidi. So I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So don't underestimate, when you're up to bat and volunteering for these demos, because it just helps the next person very, very much. Okay, is there any other volunteer? That was a very good one. You see, I'm so glad Heidi stepped up to the plate, because even though she thought it was trivial, it's very, very relatable. And I hope everyone sees that. So jazakumullah khair, barakallahu fikum. So I want everyone to, again, go on SufiExpo.com and register there so you know when the next training is. And as you may or may not know, these training sessions are sponsored by Sufi911.com, where you can help yourself to our groundbreaking products that for boosting immunity. We have multitudes of people that have benefited for COVID and much, much more than that, cancers, helping themselves heal. We don't treat anybody, but we help people, we teach people how to heal themselves. And you can read up on that on Sufi911.com. But SufiExpo.com is where to keep connected with us, so you can learn about where the next session, next program, next physical event, all of that good stuff is going to be. So if you just want to remember one, we have, we also have SufiSalon.com, but if you want to remember just one, SufiExpo.com, and then just register there, and then you'll learn about all the other offerings that we have. So SufiSalon.com. Yeah, so there's a lot to address here in terms of the upheaval of emotions that are all over the world. So in terms of what's going on in America, if a lot of you don't know, there's all these public shootings, public violence, domestic violence, and so on happening. And a lot of it is from toxemia. So we, show people how they need to detox themselves from the brain because the behaviors are changing and hardly any doctors know about it. The behaviors, radical change in behaviors from the toxic effects of whatever is in the air, water, foods, and then of course the inoculations. But it's not just those that are inoculated that are displaying complete radical behavior shifts. So that's why we need to detox. So we have that as well with Sufi911.com. And then these trainings from SufiSalon.com are very, very crucial. And actually, that's my passion. I don't want to have a world for our children to have a world where we don't speak about our emotions and get this reflective intimacy training, the SSRI, to offset the SSRI, which is the drug, which for the most part is very, very harmful. Okay, let me take a look. Oh yeah, Kathy, step on up. And if you can, put your video on. If not, then that's fine. But it works better if you do.
Okay. Well, I don't really want to put my video
No
on.
problem. No problem. Yeah, go for it.
Just for me to talk is huge.
Okay. Oh, then I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Heidi, so much. I don't want to underestimate the volunteers. Frank, thank you. Heidi, thank you. And now Kathy, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. So it's funny because I have been working on what you're talking about for quite a long time. I grew up in an alcoholic home and I have a son with autism. So there's a lot of toxicity in our family. And my son had severe OCD and was on medications. And, I just did not like, what was happening. And even myself, growing up in an alcoholic home, I was on ADHD medications for myself.
Okay.
So I do notice, and like you're saying, and I mean, I can resonate so much about the talking about the feelings because growing up in the alcoholic home, my mother was a closet drinker. So then I grew up, and so since she was a closet drinker, it was like a secret. So I grew up with feelings like if anything, you didn't want to discuss anything, it was a secret, So that posed communication problems within my marriage. And we are now divorced. But after the divorce, I took time I just never got into another relationship. He did. And, really recognizing how I react or respond to different things. We've got through the divorce, but I'm always a people pleaser to make everything, work out for everyone. And so, like I said, we had a special needs son. And so we had made arrangements that he would take him every other weekend. He's an adult and he does quite well, but he still needs to have, care and he can't stay alone. So it wound up that he got remarried and right now he doesn't take his son every other weekend. And so I kind of it really made me very, very upset, because I have done everything to try to please and da 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 da. And I felt like I was, giving the least amount for him to do, and then he let me down.
Okay.
For taking the care, when you go through a divorce. But so those are the feelings, but I have been able to communicate and say, I understand where you're coming from, for his reasons. He wouldn't communicate and say why, he just stopped doing it. But then I communicated with him to tell him why it was bothersome to me. So I'm kind of stepping up with that communication and talking about the feelings.
Mhm.
And even though it doesn't change anything, it changes how I feel, I guess.
Yeah. Good
So,
for you. Okay.
so anything you want to, add to that, but it's just and the funny thing is too, I work in education, but I also work in mental health, and
Mhm.
I work in crisis, and I see this a lot. But in crisis, the way I work, they throw medication to it. And
Yes.
I'm not for that at all.
Right.
And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for some medication, but I have found, even with my son, he had severe enough OCD where he was hospitalized for 2.5 months. But now things like zinc really help him with,
Okay.
with behavior and stuff like that. So it's just, I guess when you look, I know that there's all kinds of toxicity and everything, but when you go to regular doctors, they don't look at that.
Right.
So that's been an issue, but I have him quite stable, but he's not where he really should be,
Mhm. Okay.
and
So
probably myself as well, because, ADHD still is a part of my life, but I don't take medication for it.
okay. Okay. So which part of the interaction did you say he's your ex or?
Yeah, he's my ex-husband, and now he's remarried. Yeah.
Oh, right, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So which part is the upsetting part? Can you repeat that?
Well, the upsetting part to me was that we had made an agreement and that he would take him every other weekend.
Mhm.
And he has a job where it's hard for him to care, but really for the most part, for his, the entire life, he has a job that, he's quite busy with. But I
Mhm.
just felt like I made this agreement with him, and I took on the bulk of it because I'm a people pleaser, and I don't, I just, that's part of the reason why I try to make everyone happy, I guess I would say. And then he ended up getting remarried, and then, he got busy with his new life, and then it got, there was just issues around, moving in to his new wife's house and stuff like that. So he wasn't really comfortable, and he finally told me that. Um, but he just started when he moved in from his house to her house, he brought all of my son's stuff to me. And I said, well, what are you doing? Like you're moving, he's going to be staying there. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he didn't
Okay.
anymore. And then, so but he keeps, we're going almost on 2 years. So he's in the process of building a new house now. But anyway, that's not, it's frustrating to me because now I have the total care.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
also, it's also some of what I have done, but it's part of the communication part where I'm kind of saying that
Mhm.
I've always tried to, I don't speak up. I always try to make it so everybody's happy or whatever.
Mhm.
This really upset me because I felt like I was really being taken advantage of, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Right. So would you say that it was surprising or shocking that he did that? I just wonder how it
well,
landed.
no, I was shocked,
Mhm.
but I also feel like some of his emotional baggage is why he can't handle his piece, and
Mhm.
he's doing what he needs to do. And I sort of understood that, but I stepped up and I did communication instead of, um, I communicated about it and I've accepted it for what it is.
Mhm.
Um, because of where he's at, I guess. Like, it's kind of like you had said before, you know, sometimes they think they're leaving and the grass is going to be greener.
Right.
And it isn't, so to speak. I'm not saying anything against, you know, his
Yeah.
new wife, but he hasn't taken care of his issues yet.
Right.
And so, and he couldn't deal with certain things. And it began to be too much for him.
Yeah.
Because his life got, what ends up happening now is, you know, like the dissolve of our marriage is, you know, like we had a son with special needs. He had severe OCD. I had a mother who had a stroke and I was helping take care of her. You know, we're both working. We're really busy. So he escaped from that because it was overwhelming. And I obviously didn't take care of things because, you know, of the fact that I had grown up the way that I did. And when everything was overwhelming, or I wouldn't communicate that. I would just do what I needed to do and I wouldn't share. I will give you for instance, you know, I was going to college at the time and it drove him crazy. Like I would take classes and I wouldn't have time for that. And he was mad that I didn't communicate. I did that because I felt like I'm never going to get my education behind me and get, you know, a better paying job or whatnot. But I wouldn't communicate it. I would just do what I wanted to do because I would be afraid that if someone would say no, you know, or that I had too much, you know. So it was just a vicious cycle of stuff like that. But I finally, you know, when the marriage dissolved, I stopped that and I really looked at the stuff that I did and I started healing myself. Obviously, I'm not completely because I'm crying over it, you know. So I know I have these things stuck in, these emotions and stuff stuck in my body.
Yes.
But I know that I've started to change, you know, the way I deal with it. And I look at also where they're coming from, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think he is not doing that to hurt me. He is
Right.
not doing that to hurt our son. I know he loves our son, you know, and I know that he he never expected to be in the position where he couldn't do it. And the fact that he can't talk about it is probably very close to why I couldn't before, you know, but I've just worked through it, you know, more than he has. So it's funny because it's almost a reversal where now his life is filled and he's so busy because he's so busy all the time
Right.
because now he has more to take care of.
Yeah. Okay, Kathy, I'm going to interrupt you there and say, so you jump to, so I'm glad you have that part clear. You're using the advanced techniques where you're explaining in a good way some of his actions that could be very, very hurtful. Now imagine if you sat with and interpreted his actions as, oh, he's doing this despite me, which unconsciously a lot of people would do, right?
Right.
If you're living in a reactionary world where you haven't processed it the way you have, then most people, what they would do is go to the worst place, the worst explanation, which is he's doing this despite me. He's doing this because fill in the blank, right? So you've done that part and that investigative, you know, inquiry into yourself enough to take care of that. So I applaud you for that. Now, you just need to address your states and your hurt, right?
Correct.
And so that's where you are from the scenario you brought to the fore here. So that's interesting. So all you need to do now is inquire about what your emotions are with this, his not taking, you know, his son because of this new relation that he has, and what you're going to do with it, with the emotions that you're sitting with now. So you need to, first of all, identify what emotions are there. So this is the process, right? Whatever it is that's in front of us in this moment, we have to inquire within ourselves, what are the emotions I'm sitting with? What is the emotional soup that I'm sitting with? And then unpack that. And then go beneath that to say, what are the feelings underneath it? And how am I interpreting that? What does that mean? Because now you've done a really good job, I have to say, of interpreting in a better
Correct.
having compassion for yourself and saying, hey, I'm doing the best that I can. And crying is okay, by the way. It's recognizing our in the present moment emotion and state. Do you understand that part?
Yeah, I do. Well, I think what it is I think it's
Okay.
abandonment issues that I have had from the past, and then, you know, from this situation. I think I felt that way when he left, but then I discovered that I could take care of myself, and I also decided that I really didn't have enough energy to take care of anyone else. So
Yeah.
so I never got into, another relationship. And I don't think that I think that I think I have a hard time letting people take care of me. So, I think that's an issue.
Right. Well, you just said the hot word is probably the abandonment. And I would venture to guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, that goes back to childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Both my mother and my father. My mother abandoned me, and she was a wonderful mother. She would cook meals for me. She would
Mhm.
do all the well. It wasn't that she was a bad mother. It's that she had the drinking as an issue, and then she would go into her bedroom and close the door. Close the door, and it was like, not not admit it. It was almost like a denial of it. And then my father also left when I was about 5, but they never divorced. He
Right.
just left. So there was just abandonment on both ends. But as I got to be an adult and I understood, and my mother, had a stroke, and then she stopped drinking and stuff like that. But then it felt like it got turned around and I'm taking care of her. Like it's almost like I was taking care of her when I was young, and then I had to do it again when
Right.
I was older. But it's, yes, definitely those issues. And
Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question, which means that ask yourself this in private too. And you're getting a lot of love here, Sister Shihara saying, Kathy's sending you lots of love your way. You're so brave. Yeah, you see, when we explore our human condition with each other, you see how, like, if people knew, some of what they spew out to people on social media, they would never do that if they knew what that person's background to coming to this moment has been, right? Like, on social media, you don't get to know a person at this level. And had you done that, there's no way you would spew out 90% of the things you spew out on social media. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. But so anyway, thank you so much for sharing that. So for you, I would say there's these abandonment issues. So had that not happened to you in your childhood, or not necessarily not happened to you, but did you talk to anybody about the abandonment that took place in childhood? Ever?
oh yeah, I had therapy about it and everything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so as an adult, but I meant as a child, were you able to talk to anybody when you
No,
were
not really.
right? Okay, that's why it had to be done as an adult, and and so there basically what our SSRI is, yes, you can go to therapists, but if you knew the techniques that you can use yourself on yourself, this is the same thing we teach with healing your body of
Right.
medical ailments. It's the same thing. So that's what we're saying. We're at a place of crisis in the world right now where both brain and body need help ASAP so instantly that we can't even, and first of all, it's a mess trying to get it from the medical establishment. So so we're saying we can really empower ourselves in healing ourselves. That's basically the summation of these sessions we're going to have, but obviously the rest of it is the how to. So now that it's very clear that there were abandonment issues, imagine if you didn't have the abandonment issues, but more so that if you didn't have that lack of processing of it, then what's happening now would not be so hurtful. That's the point.
Right.
Exactly. So
And
underneath,
it actually isn't as, I mean, I'm surprised that I'm crying as much as I am, but that just shows me that it's probably in my body still.
but it's good. So our training tells us that if anybody tells you not to cry, wrong
Right.
suggestion. Yeah, it's because that's a release. Anything
Right.
that comes from us, involuntarily, it should be embraced because the body knows. The body knows.
Right.
And
I
everything
just
is
thought
so-
I had worked through it enough that I'd be able to talk about it without like
yeah.
being a basket case.
No, it's welcome here. That's who you are in the present moment. We're going to embrace you with it. And it's very, very welcome. So
Yes.
thank you for that's your authentic self. That's what what you're bringing to the fore. So we embrace everyone who comes here with whatever emotions, whatever feelings that they have. And we want to embrace you and hold you in that state that you're in. Because that's what allows a human being to feel safe. If they can be authentically themselves with all this within themselves, a lot of it is ineffable. We don't, we can't say, like, in every state, are we able to say, explain to somebody, oh, I'm having this physiological response right now. I'm having this involuntary response right now. But you can be your authentic self here, and we're going to embrace you in that, regardless of what it is. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And it is brave of you. And so I would just suggest for homework to just go underneath what is the abandonment, what are the emotions beneath it, and the feelings beneath it. And I think with that is a good place to end, because we're at the 2-hour mark. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was very, very beautiful. And yeah, please join again. So again, everybody, if you could just register at sufiexpo.com. And that way, if you didn't, if any number changes or the next session, you want to make sure that you have, that's the only way we can reach you, for alerting you to the next session, which might be next weekend. It might be in a couple of weeks. We don't know. It's just based on the needs that we get of people. So, and then our own administrative time. So thank you so much. But every session is beautiful. Every session is different. And I hope we have more and more participants and volunteers each time, because that's a deeper, each one of us will be able to go and then go home and do the homework and implement it in our life. Eventually, we want more and more people in the world to be able to practice this, because it will change each one of us individually and collectively. So thank you once again. May God allow you all to have safe spaces everywhere you go, of being welcome and live in safety. Jazakumullah khair, Siti Rana. See. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Heidi. And until we meet again, it might be next week. We'll let you know if you sign up on sufiexpo.com. Barakallahu fikum. Let me just shut off the recording here. And thank you, Jazakallah khair, Sister Shihara.
Wa iyyakum. I am really enjoying it. It's very touching to listen to some of the people.
I
Sorry,